The second thing I was going to say about Dolores was that she would talk a lot. If you know the three waves of volunteers, not you, but anybody watching, the third wave are the children and the indigo children, the crystal children, whatever. And I think that the fourth wave are now the non-speaking autistic kids that were interviewed in the telepathy tapes. And I'm really working on this theory that I think autism is an evolutionary leap. And, she would always say these autistic kids are very special, but I don't remember her ever saying why. But now we're beginning to discover, Candace, you've listened to the telepathy tapes, right?
I'm on episode 2. I keep
Okay.
trying.
Just keep going. I mean,
I keep trying to plug it into my life.
I
Is
get
what
it.
I'm telling you.
By the
Yeah.
time you get to the end, I'm on TikTok a lot, which is kind of my thing is TikTok, not YouTube, not Instagram or whatever. I found my audience at TikTok, and I did a TikTok on this because these kids, these nonverbal autistic kids, are connected not only to each other in a world wide web, but to all the realms
On the hill.
on
On
the
the hill.
hill.
Hi, everyone. It's Candace Craw-Goldman again from quantumhealers.com. It's kind of casual day at the farm. I'm doing a little bit of work, a little bit of farm, a little bit of interviews, back and forth all day long. So this is what you get. This is what you get today. You get casual me today. Usually I like, should I put on another shirt? Not today. And part of that is because we were just talking about how comfortable we are together, right, Mary Truitt?
Absolutely, completely comfortable.
Mary Truitt and I have known each other for a long time, but I'm not going to ask her what date and what year we've known each other because she gets those really wrong.
100%. I get them all wrong. I was thinking before we even started this interview, I was like, she better not ask me any dates. She knows me well enough not to ask me any. The only thing I remember is the year that I became a recommended practitioner, and that was 2014. And I remember that because that's the year dear Dolores died. So,
Right. Well, that
um,
was a big year. That was a huge year.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we were talking about that quite a bit. And I like released a video of it. So those of you about that, recommended practitioner used to be what we called the level 3 people. And then for a little time we called them ambassadors. That didn't last very long. And then we finally settled on just the number, and that was that. Yeah. So we've kind of, good for you for sticking with quantum healing for this long because that's rare, really, really rare.
Is
To be
that
at
right?
it. Oh gosh, to do this for 11 years, yeah. So, um, it wasn't too far into me assisting Dolores when we started asking, and when I say we, it was me for a while, and then Tom came because he'd been involved in a number of businesses and startups and stuff before, and he would ask some basic business questions, and he ended up helping Dolores too, on the back end, very no face and very quietly, but on those the nuts and bolts stuff of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, oh gosh, at the time, early days, all they did was put people's names and phone numbers on a website for the longest time. And it was like, we got to clean this up because people are calling, not, and then even the people who would answer say, well, I'm not doing that anymore. And we're like, we need to clean this up and we need to find out who's actually still practicing. And we learned something the first couple of years of doing that remains true to today, which is this. There's all kinds of reasons people take QHHT, the class, or BQH, or other programs like this. And not everybody who takes the class needs to open up a practice and needs to hang a shingle. That doesn't invalidate the value of the class or the skill that you have in any sort of way. But to actually accept clients, here are the statistics. After 1 year, let's say 100 people take a class. After 1 year, exactly. How many people you think are still accepting clients or accepting clients? Maybe some never did, but after a year of 100 people, because it's
I
easy
don't
to do the
know.
math. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here's numbers again.
Yeah.
10, only 10. Only one out of 10 is accepting clients. Now take those 10 and then ask them the next year, how many of those are still practicing?
Yeah, probably very few. Yeah.
One.
Why do,
One.
why do you think that is, Candace? I mean, I totally understand why people take the class and then don't practice. That I understand. But of the people who choose to practice, why do you think they stop?
Boy, I have a lot of thoughts about that. In general, the people thought, the sort of the idea of just human beings starting something and not following up, that's so common, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to start this exercise program. I'm going to start this. I'm making that New Year's resolution. And then no. So there's a lot of that. And
Mhm.
that's just human in any endeavor, sports,
Sure.
diets, just anything. So that's a huge part of it. Number two, I think this is a big one. They're just not cut out for the work. The work is, and a couple things. One is there's a lot of surprises in this work.
No kidding. I was going to say it takes real guts to do a
It
session.
does. It takes
You have to
guts. Yeah.
think on your feet, not be afraid when weird voices come out or dicey situations happen.
Yeah.
It takes guts.
It takes a lot of guts. And human beings, as you know, one of the ways and the powers that want to be take advantage of this part of humanity, I believe too, which is human beings in general don't like change. They don't like change. I want to know it's going to happen. I know, this happened. I want to know it's going to happen. I want the same thing to happen tomorrow. They don't like things being mixed up. I've never been that kind of person. I like things to have a variety of things going on in my life. So I think people don't like change. There's that too. And yeah, I mean, those are some of the main reasons that I think. And then I think this too, and this one is completely valid. And this is, if you think about it, it's one of the reasons I created BQH as I did, which is I know a number of people who they just wanted to sit in Dolores's energy. They wanted to meet her in real life when they were taking her class, or they just wanted to learn some approaches in that work that they could apply in something completely different. So they thought of it as I'll take this, and this. What was that energy class you and I took? What was that? I'm
Oh
not
my,
even remembering now.
bio.
Yeah, that. So, do you list that anywhere? I don't.
I don't, and also I don't use it. I
Right,
didn't
but
find
I'm
it.
glad I went. I'm glad I saw the operation. I learned different approaches. I met people. It got me thinking on other levels. You and I spent wonderful time together. That's
That's right.
mostly what I remember about it.
Me too.
And we asked, remember, we got in trouble. We got in trouble more than once because we were in the back of the class. We're talking about it, all that's going on. And we're like, what about this? And what about
I
that?
know. I know.
So there was I am not sorry I spent the money and went there. I'm not sorry about that at all.
Yeah.
I don't use that. I don't even talk about it. I don't even remember what it was called, obviously.
I want to add something to what you're saying because I think there are so many modalities available now than there were before for people who are seeking some kind of spiritual expansion. And I I'm very interested in the fact that going to a QHHT or BQH session means that the client has to participate. There's
Yeah.
nothing passive about it. And
Yeah.
I was discussing this with someone yesterday, which is, there's all this controversy about the somnambulistic level versus the conscious level. Who remembers, who doesn't? Am I making it up? Is it a daydream? And one of the things I always say to that is when you wake up in the morning, do you say, why did I make up that stupid dream? Like it never occurs to us that we've made up our dream. We know that we created our dream out of some kind of very brilliant part of our mind. But anyway, the thing I wanted to say is that QHHT and BQH is participatory. So when you come out of that session, first of all, when you go in, you have to trust the images that you're seeing and the information that you're getting. And the reward of that is that organic uh, beauty of, for example, if you were a dolphin and you were jumping through the water and see the rainbow of the water and whatever, no one can ever take that away from you. You're like, I own that. That is mine. And so that's one of the good parts about it. But the hard part about it is so many people can walk away from a session and say, I made up all this crap during my hypnotherapy session. And I think for practitioners who don't have a strong ego, this can be very difficult. And so they kind of give up, like, oh, well, everybody thinks I'm a fraud. So if you don't grow with the work and expand your
Right.
own and strengthen your own ego and your own ability to hold the space, no matter what happens, then I think I see why people would quit.
Sure. And, that goes back to so much of what has been so impactful in the whole world the last just several of years, which is sort of holding the party line, right? So the party line is one thing. And to do this work, you've got to go against the party line. And, they do a lot of experiments. It's the Milgram experiment. The Milgram experiment is the one with they put a scientist in a room with, or even a pretend scientist and doctor wearing a white coat, and then a volunteer, and then people in the other room. And the whole experiment is that the volunteer thinks the experiment is about like these people or whatever, but it's all about the volunteer. And the scientist says, okay, you need to push this button and that will give them a mild electric
Yes.
shock. Remember
Yeah.
that one? Yeah. And then it just keeps going until the people in the other room are screaming, absolutely screaming in pain. And the guy in the white coat with the clipboard is saying, okay, now we need to dial it up a little bit more. And because of that authority, and so I think it's 15%. There's 15% of people in that situation who's going, well, hell no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
85% of people will do what the guy in the white coat says, even if it's hurting other people.
I mean, even, I had this such sad thing that happened to me. I live in New York City, and my street sometimes has some homeless people or drug addicts or whatever. And last summer, I was walking down the street, and there was a young man, probably in his early 20s, lying like just splayed out on the sidewalk. And he had some food that was kind of knocked over next to him. And his eyes were sort of half, gone, whatever. And I looked around, and like everybody was just walking by him. And, we see a lot of homeless people. They're usually sitting in a doorway or they have a little bag, but they're not lying on the ground with their eyes at half mast, whatever. And I turned, there was a young man standing kind of near me, looking bored out of his mind. And I looked at him and I looked at the man on the ground, and the guy just went like this. Like, what are you going to do? It's like, really? And then all these able-bodied people were walking by. And I thought, like, the old lady is the one that's going to help him. Okay. So I tapped him on the shoulder and I woke him up and I said, have you taken something we need to know about? I mean, you can imagine what I said to him. Do I need to call 911? Finally, he sat up, he opened his eyes, and he literally had the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen in my life. They were this deep forest green, and they were so full of, I mean, I would just have to say Christ consciousness or Christ energy. I felt as if Jesus was looking back at me. And I said, sit here for a minute. I'm going to get you a bottle of water. It was about 110 degrees outside. Got him water, helped him, and he went on his way. But it was like everybody just walks by. People just want to go with the crowd, they don't want to stand out in any way. Um, And just to change the subject a tiny bit, a couple of hours
Well,
later,
that was pretty deep. It's okay to change it.
well, no, what happened was, and this is what makes our work so fascinating, Candace, and what keeps me coming back to the table always is a couple of hours later, I had a session, and the first lifetime that the woman went to, she was a little girl who'd been abandoned on the street, and
Of
everybody
course.
was walking by her.
This is how the energy works. This is how the energy works in quantum healing, which is why, like, the more miracles you witness, the more you get to see later and have happen in your own life. All of this is the way energy works. I have found that you cannot, you can't compartmentalize. You can't even try.
No, yeah. Because the sessions, I mean, I began to realize so many years ago at the very beginning, I'd have a session and I'd say, wait, was that for me or was that for the client? Like so many clients would come who were having the exact same problem I was having in my life or whatever. And like, oh, wow, the subconscious really nailed that one and that helped
Yep.
me.
Yep. Energy matches too. Energy matches.
Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Well, that's astonishing. That's amazing. Well, hey, listen, I don't know when this is going to go out. We are recording this on the 28th of March. I may get it out really quickly. So just in case, it is going to be almost exactly a month from today. We are going to have the BQH immersion class. So for those of you, even if you're in the middle of taking BQH class, you might want to think about joining us here in Kansas. There's only 10 seats. I'm texting all kinds of texts and messages coming in today. We still have 2 or 3, depending, people are juggling schedules, etc. But I do want to mention that, and I want to mention it primarily because of this. It's going to be the only BQH immersion class in 2025, and I've gone ahead and made the decision to not offer anymore until I'm no longer caring for my father.
Yeah.
It's
Thinking
just too much.
too much.
It's just
Yeah.
too much for me. And there you have it. And that doesn't mean they're going to go away forever. But I don't know how long that's going to be. And I might change my mind, but I rather doubt it. I have caregivers, but not overnight. So they show up, but every single night I'm taking care of my dad. And I'm tired.
And what an honor and a privilege. And there'll be plenty of time for you to have immersion.
I
you know,
hope so. I mean, if he
twice-
lives as long as my grandma, he's going to be here for 11 more years.
Okay, I don't know what to say to that.
Right? How do you even think about that? The man's going to be 95 in September.
It's just-
And they're just very long lived on that side of the family, and I hope I benefit from that.
yes,
But
of course.
yeah, so thanks for letting me tell you that. I've got
Let
some
me-
other news too,
Well,
but go
let me
ahead.
say
ahead.
something about the immersion class because I remember, don't ask me how many years ago you put out that you were doing the first BQH immersion class. And I remember I was the first one to sign up. Do you remember?
Yes, I do remember that.
And
And
I
then something happened, and I don't remember what it
can't
was.
remember what happened, but I couldn't go. And the reason I wanted to go so much was not just because I wanted to see the sort of new BQH work expand into the future, but also because I had such incredible memories of the very last reunion that we did with Dolores. And it was in the fall of 2014, I think. And you and I,
Summer 2015 was the last reunion of all, but the last one with
I didn't go to that.
Dolores.
The
Yes,
last
the
one with
last one with
Dolores.
Dolores. So just a clarification point.
Right. So, yeah, I didn't go after she died. But that one, I guess she had a couple of months left to live, and the ideas were pouring out of us. I remember meeting with you and talking, and I had this vision in my head of a Dolores Cannon Center in Arkansas, where all her books would be, the archival material. You could watch videos of her. I had this whole idea, and I remember saying to you and to one of her other assistants at the time, you guys have to start thinking about this. We need a Dolores Cannon Center. It has to happen. And then not just that idea, but so many other ones. And so during these sessions, these immersion, classes or the reunions, when people get together, the synergistic effect is just like watching popcorn pop. I think people grow exponentially, they learn exponentially, and I am not going to be able to go to the immersion class, but I recommend it so much.
Thank you so much. The conversation you're talking about, just the conversation is so personally important to me for a variety of reasons. And it brings me to the next news point. So talk about energy. But do you know that I can even tell you, if you gave me like a layout of the auditorium where we had that conversation, I could tell you where we were standing.
I can too. We were right in front of the stage, standing right there, a little bit to the left, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember it just so vividly and in so many ways. And at the same time, my mother was not well, and there was these weird swirling energetics and emotions around me because I had some guilt about leaving mom in Kansas, and she was not well. Dolores had recovered, but would end up dying, in a couple of months after that. And I had this swirling, I still have it a little bit. Dolores' mother energy for me, mother energy for me, all of that was sort of swirling, and I felt death coming. But see, I left my mother, who was older and who was ill, so it was all very weird in my field. It was very weird. Death was all around me, but I kind of thought it was my mom going out, and she didn't die for three more years. But yeah, you're right. And getting together in real life is just so amazing. And we only have room for 10 people. And do you know, in this last class, I'm just flipping through some video. I have a lot of video content that I could make some stuff with to share. It's simply time. Time is my biggest challenge. But I am looking at this woman. Her name was Annie. And she was talking about how, with all the sessions she had personally, she went knowing and believing her skill level would improve in that. She goes, but I can't believe how much it has impacted me. And of out of just that small group of people, there was 2 who had instantaneous healings, 2 of the practitioners.
Amazing.
And one of them was glasses. Yeah, it was the best. Because it was the day I had a screen out, and I was showing some stuff, and there was some stuff written on there, and I kept seeing this. She just kept doing this and rubbing her glasses and putting her glasses on and looking and doing all of this. And we finally went, hey, why don't you tell us what's going on here? And she couldn't wear her glasses anymore because her eyes were healed from a session, and then it was confusing to her. She'd been wearing glasses for so long, and she'd had extra problems with her eyes for a couple of years. And all that and I don't even think it was like an intentional thing, right? It wasn't, please, I need this practice session to focus on healing my eyes. It wasn't that at all. But
it just happened.
Yeah, it just did. It just happened. Yeah. So here's some exciting news. There is, and I'm not going to steal her thunder, and I'm going to make it a tease because I'm just am. But we have a colleague who's been doing QHHT and BQH. She took Dolores's QHHT class initially, believe it or not, a few months before I did. So she's been at this for a really long time. What was that? Did you see that?
Yeah, it was
wow. It was a flash.
Yeah, it was.
Amazing. That's amazing. Anyway, I've never seen that, not even on Zoom. That was crazy. It was like a camera flash right in the middle of the screen. I hope it got recorded.
Something flew across the screen almost.
Woo! Amazing. Yeah. Anyway, so this gal, she lives in Europe. She just had a session. She took the class. she set QHHT aside, didn't come back to it for years. So much so many years that Dolores had already passed. I had already gone off on my own. I already had released BQH. So that's when she came back to it. So she took it, didn't do anything for the longest time, came back. So that's who this person is. And she has a session like any other session booked. It happened to be of a documentary filmmaker. And he is finishing up a documentary, an hour-long documentary about quantum healing, focusing around this practitioner's work. But also, I got to be a part of it. And I also submitted, and he uses portions of my session with Dolores, and he remastered her voice.
Oh
And
my God.
I collected a bunch of photographs. They're crummy photographs. They are terrible. They could have been okay photographs, but they are some of the blurriest cell phone photos that other people took that I've all. But he was able to take footage, voice, photographs, and a little bit of interview of me, and sprinkle it through this documentary. And one of Dolores's daughters is in it.
Oh, that's
It's amazing. I don't think she knows I'm in it, though. We'll see how that plays out. It's not my documentary. Anyway, I'm really hoping, not for myself, but for, let's go all the way back to the beginning of this, quantum healing and Dolores and the things that she started and the dissemination of the excitement of that idea. I think because people, I was afraid that after her death, as you were, that so much of that, I mean, I would have gone, if it were me, I would have gone straight to her desk and taken photos like you see of Einstein's desk.
yeah, I can't,
All
yeah,
of that.
that's
All
what
of
I was
all
trying to warn everybody about.
Of
Yeah.
course. And I attempted that conversation and was shut down faster than you can imagine. And
I mean,
none of that ever happened. And I thought Dolores's entire legacy was like this and headed out screen, exit left. And but YouTube and YouTube Shorts kept her alive. So there are more people interested in her than ever. So for that idea and that reason, I think this documentary could take off. And I actually really hope it even goes to like a film festival kind of thing, but it might not. It might just be a YouTube thing, but hey.
Right? Nothing wrong with YouTube. I want to say one thing about Dolores, two things right now, which is I cannot believe how smart she was about allowing herself to be videotaped. Because if you go back in time to that era, there are not that many good videotapes of anybody talking about anything. And, there was a period, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years of her life where every time she opened her mouth, every time she went up on stage, she was videotaped. And she's left us this incredible legacy of her confidence and her, the information she got. And it's just a miracle that people are able to experience her in such a way, because not everybody did video and she did so much of it. And I've said to people in the past, if you have watched a video of Dolores, you've met her. And she adored the camera, I think,
She adored the video camera. I
Yeah.
have to absolutely tell you that, because there's a reason for still photographs you only see like 2 of them. And that is because she hated still cameras. She absolutely hated them. And most people know I was doing professional photography, and they're towards the end, about 20. And I finally got my courage up enough. It was the same year I got my beautiful glass award that she gave me. That's also in the documentary.
It's exciting.
It's so exciting. I can't believe it. I'm like, when I talked to the filmmaker, I'm like, are you putting all, because he sent me the clips. When we get off air, I can show you some. We'll share screen. I'm not going to be doing any of that in public, but I'll show you some of them when we're off screen. it was 2012, and I finally got my courage up. I'm like, you have all of these, we call them, photographers call them grip and grin pictures of people there like this with cell phones, and most of them are blurry and, get the whole ceiling in, or, just terrible shots. And they finally said, okay, you can take your camera in. And so she was just sort of introducing the class, and I stayed against the wall and I was trying to take pictures. I did that for about 5 minutes. And then I took my camera, I put it in the bag, and I never tried again. She couldn't stand that camera being on her. And the energy that I got from her, I waited for her to warm up to it. It was just this, it
That's
was weird. It's
fascinating.
weird because grip and grin and hugging somebody, okay, video, okay. But me taking a professional shot, she wanted nothing to do with it. And again, that's why you have the one of her with the blue shirt.
You know what? I think that has to do with her being about the work and not about the person. Because if she was not communicating information, every word out of her mouth, communicating something important or information or history or whatever, she wasn't happy, I don't think. I don't think she wanted to be a passive face. She was so, I mean, I don't know if she had any Gemini planets in her chart, but she was all about the communication, you know?
Yeah, she was. I've pondered that for a very long time, kind of what all that was, but all I know is I didn't, that was it. I never, never even tried again. But what I was trying to do was exactly what you were talking to me in that auditorium, which was we need to record her while we still can, you
Yes.
know? And what I wanted with those photos wasn't studio portrait photography. She always cared about her hair, by the way.
Oh
Well,
my
I
God.
can't,
Can't
I
you
can't
just
do that until I get to the hairdresser, because she
yeah.
came from that era where those women, our mothers, they couldn't possibly wash their
I
own
know.
hair. So anyway, which I still find a very odd thing, but uh she she was fine with the videotape, but
Mhm.
she just really couldn't stand the photos. And yeah, anyway, so there's that. But I think she has arranged and blessed this upcoming documentary to help us all, and I can't wait for it
I'm
to come
very
out.
excited. I'm very
Very
excited to see it.
exciting.
The second thing I was going to say about Dolores was uh, that she would talk a lot. If you know the three waves of volunteers, not you, but anybody watching, the third wave are the children, and the indigo children, the crystal children, whatever. And I think that the fourth wave are now the non-speaking autistic kids that were interviewed in the telepathy tapes. And I'm really working on this theory that I think autism is an evolutionary leap. And, she would always say these autistic kids are very special, but I don't remember her ever saying why. But now we're beginning to discover, Candace, you've listened to the telepathy tapes, right?
I'm on episode 2. I keep
Okay.
trying.
Just keep going. I mean,
I
by
mean,
the
I keep
time
trying to plug it into my life,
I
is
get
what I'm telling you.
by the
Yeah.
time you get to the end, I'm on TikTok a lot, which is kind of my thing is TikTok, not YouTube, not Instagram or whatever. I found my audience at TikTok, and I did a TikTok on this because these kids, these nonverbal autistic kids, are connected not only to each other in a world wide web, but to all the realms
On the hill,
on
on
the
the hill.
hill,
Yeah.
and they blow us out of the water. I mean, I felt like I've been trying to, expand people's consciousness and support them and do healing and blah, blah, blah. And it's like these kids, they're going to blow us all out of the water. And I think that we all need to wake up and look at what this autism means.
Yeah.
And, you know, um, I don't know, it's just clearly blooming, this whole field.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think actually the telepathy tapes may be, there are many things that have contributed to the awakening of humanity, including the absolute tragedy that was COVID and all the things surrounding it. As awful as it was, it has woken people up. And I think this is too. My biggest concern, though, is so many of them who are so incapable of, in our current setup of society, incapable of caring for themselves, that they have to have a team of people caring for them so that those people don't contribute in other ways. And we are headed towards, unless something changes hugely, we're headed towards bankruptcy. There's so many of them that need teams of support just for everything to get through life.
Exactly.
We cannot sustain it. So I don't see how that works itself out currently. I mean, I have to hope that it does, because I have grandchildren, and what else could I possibly do? I do know that our work is important. I do know that we are contributing and helping in that way somehow, even though I can't see the map of that. But I think you're right. And I think, the new children.
And I think
The
it's
new
a little bit
children.
messy right now
Oh,
because
it's
it's kind
huge.
of like, we're going from this paradigm to that. I mean, just the fact that all the UFO stuff is coming out, is to me so incredible. I think that we are growing so fast as a society. I mean, military people are looking at me and saying, wait, this UFO stuff is real. And I'm like, yep, has been now for, thousands of years. So it's like, I think our whole sense of what the world is and how it operates and how we can operate within it is changing so fast that it's almost like watching, a movie on speed for, sped up 10 times.
Yeah, it's really true.
Like hold
You know
on to
what?
hats.
Just yesterday, I did an interview with another practitioner, and she was talking about, this is amazing, and this will come out too, and you can watch it. But Nina Morocco, she actually had a Kundalini awakening experience while she was facilitating a session,
Interesting.
an online session. She had a full-blown knock her socks off, knock her over Kundalini experience. It was it was just fantastic to hear. So this is somebody not having a session on her. She's facilitating and it happens to her. But it gets even better, because while we're talking about it and I'm having her really, really explain what it felt like and all that stuff, I'm sitting right in this chair. It happened just yesterday. And while she's talking to me, I'm feeling, and I'm starting to feel it right now on my left side. I feel the floor vibrating. I feel the chair vibrating, and I start feeling it come up my own spine. And she's like telling me about how it was really root and sacral. That was the biggest movement and the biggest, expanse, and with all of the energy and all that stuff. And I'm listening to all that, and I'm pondering even in my head, do I mention this while we're talking? Do I talk about the fact that I'm feeling this? And I go ahead and I mention it, and she says, oh my God, me too. So here,
It
here are
reminds
two people talking about a Kundalini rising. All we're doing is talking about it, and we're
it's
stirring it in us. Yeah.
it reminds me a little bit of when you get chills or goose flesh, I think it's a beautiful physical reaction to it, you
It
know.
is. And I'm having it right now,
Yeah.
coming up wave
I'm
after
not.
wave. Wave after wave,
not.
just me remembering yesterday. And I always know it's big when it hits my face. I mean,
Yeah.
because I can get it. And then when it comes up over and goes over and over my face, I know it's big. And that's happening right now. And while I'm experiencing this, I'm looking at your face and I'm seeing your face. Maybe it's just my mind's eye, but it's getting rosier and rosier and bigger, kind of like I'm looking at your own energy is becoming, oh, and how interesting is that?
I'm
Are those
always this color. I took a
the
hot
flowers
pencil,
behind you though? The flowers
the
behind you.
color,
There's tulips, and what's
roses,
behind?
roses.
So do you know that Nina chose a card before the session and talked about how much the Kundalini experience had to do with roses.
Oh, wow.
So look at even just this connection.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really look at those roses till I started seeing your face.
And also those roses were upstairs I'm on the 6th floor, which is where my office is. And I live on the 10th floor. And I brought the roses downstairs because I thought, oh, I want to
Be
take,
nice.
it was my birthday yesterday. And I said, oh,
Happy birthday.
I'll I'll take those flowers down to my office. And so it was sort of a last minute, thing.
Again, the energy connection, right?
Mhm. Yeah, incredible. Well, we better think about what we need to talk about because I think,
Anything you want.
well, one thing that's been really interesting me lately is the sort of parallel between the kinds of sessions I had a session a couple of weeks ago where we didn't go to any past lives or future lives or anything. It was simply the Galactic Council talking through my client for 2 hours.
Mhm.
And, it was really interesting because the kind of information that was coming through was all about how we're meant to be living in the coming months and years. And the key word was community over and over and over again. And then after that session, every time I listen to anybody talking about anything or whatever, everyone's talking about community and different types of community, whether it's online or a tribal community or like-minded or local, farmers or whatever. But the thing about the communication that's happening from the other side, so channelers is what I'm really thinking of, because they told her the reason we came through today is because you're going to be channeling us. And you'll be remote viewing for us, you'll be channeling, you'll be
And it
helping.
starts today.
Yes. And they said you'll be helping the police find missing children who've been trafficked.
Wow.
So the Galactic Council was getting really deeply involved in a lot of that stuff. But so what interests me is if you look at the channelers like, Bashar or Paul Selig or anything, I'm interested in the parallels to AI. So I think that this sort of weaving or blending of the human experience with the other realms is happening in so many different ways, whether it's happening to us personally, or Pamela, for example, who's so amazing. Her most recent galactic channeling was one of the best I've ever heard. I can't quote it, but they gave her a beautiful description of what the purpose of life is. Um, I'm going to have to go back and transcribe it, I think. But anyway, I don't have any particular idea that I want to put forth, except that I think that looking at AI and what we call channeling right now is a really interesting thing to look at.
This is bubbling up all over the place in my own life and with other practitioners who are
Mhm.
actually, let's just say they're dipping a toe into connecting with AI to boost that kind of thing. And then I
Right.
just happened to see, I mean, you're aware, I'm sure, and our listeners and viewers probably are aware of Doreen Virtue. You know her story, Doreen Virtue. So she had the whole business that revolved around channeling angels for a while. And
And
then
then
she came,
she skewed it and
yeah,
said it was
she
demon.
yeah, she sticks to that story today. What's interesting about that is a lot of stuff. Number one, it's she and Dolores, they were friends.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, they spent time together. They were at conferences together. Doreen was a speaker at one of Dolores's transformation conferences. As a matter of fact, I think the one I may have been 2008 or 9 or something like that. All right, when I was first introduced and started working with Dolores. But I saw her talk about that, and she is just all over. Not that I see her anyway, but I know she is still tooting her own horn as it is, that it's all demonic, and she is specifically calling out AI and the Galactic Federation
It's
as
so
being
much.
demonic.
It
I
doesn't feel
just find it's interesting. It's to me, it's just so fascinating. It's like she did this for the longest time, turned on a dime, and now calls it something else. And I know you've seen, I saw it just this morning, a little bit of, let's say the a political punditry voices are talking about the Nephilim and their capture and things like that, and stuff that's coming out in the more, let's call it mainstream. But of course, and that's connecting to what they say is happening with the pyramids. Okay, I don't know. There's a lot of controversy around that. Is that really real? What they're talking about is coming out?
Right.
Is it partially real? Is it skewed? Is it propaganda? Is it pushing an agenda? I mean, there is so much happening right now. And my favorite way of looking at all of it, because I truly believe this is happening, we have to be, and I think we are headed towards more transparency. It's when people can freaking lie and conceal information that we all get in trouble.
Mhm.
It's very human. We've operated on it for the longest time. But if that becomes completely impossible, and doesn't that sort of tend to happen if telepathy and transfer of energy starts happening more too? So I think you're right. I think we're in a very messy place. It's messy. And because
It's
people are,
very messy,
yeah,
and we have to just sort of watch the storms, go by
yeah,
and just kind of sit with our own intuition. And I always come back to what Paul Selig said. I can't remember if it was in person or in one of his books, but he said, you need to learn how to discern between what you think and what you know, and the difference between what those two feelings feel like. So, well, I think this, but I know this, and it kind of is in a deeper part of your body, what you know. Um, but I also have to laugh because one of my favorite lines from Bob Dylan is all the truth in the world adds up to one big lie. I mean,
can't argue with that.
where are you going to put your foot? Like where? So
Right.
I think truth, lies, the language is sort of I mean, there's another line from Things Fall Apart, the Chinua Achebe book, which says there's no story which is not true.
Also true. And then, throw the Mandela effect in. Well, it was true yesterday, but is it true
Not true
today?
today.
You
I know.
know? You just have to laugh.
I
I mean,
know.
you have to laugh. What else are you going to do? And I think that too brings us to a more expansive place. But
Mhm.
yeah, but a much messier place.
But I want to say something else, which I think is really important right now, which is that we have entered the new era of Aquarius. And, I don't know enough about astrology to say the exact right planets and whatever, but, my understanding is that the congruency of people like us, where we've been fighting, 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 fighting the wind, now the wind is behind us. And I think we're
Yes.
all a little bit
Yeah.
tired. I know for me, when I worked
Yeah.
I was a teacher for many years, and I began to do QHHT the minute I did my first class. Don't ask me what year that was. I think it was 2005, maybe. But, the minute I started doing that work, I created a little dinky website. I think it's the same website I have now. But I found out that some of my colleagues found it, and they would watch my videos and read my blog and make fun of me all the time at work. I found out my colleagues were all laughing at me. And, you know,
Uh,
at one point they came clean and said, haha, we saw your website, you're completely insane.
oh God,
UFOs aren't
that's sad.
real, past lives aren't real, blah, blah, blah. And so a lot of us have faced real challenges,
Yeah.
with family members. And also, I think part of me, has had to say to myself, am I crazy? Like, why do I this stuff? Am I crazy? Are they crazy? And there is such a feeling now of, I really want to go back to my old job and say, like, huh, who's laughing now? Like, have you seen
Right.
the government hearings?
Yeah.
Who turns out to be the fool now? But I think we have to acknowledge that people like us, the first waivers essentially, um, have held the ground.
Yep. Yep, we have. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You have to, and that's such a human thing again. Most people, there's there's only one set of people who don't care what other people think, and those people are called psychopaths.
Mhm.
you know, and so people who, and I'll even say, well, I'm doing this and it doesn't matter to me what other people, I still, of course, think if you have empathy, if you have a heart, if you're working with people, of course you care what people think. You can't go to the base, meaning, lowest level of public opinion about some stuff because it's really ugly there, and you can't be swayed by that kind of stuff. But truly, the only people who don't care don't have feelings at all either.
Yeah.
So it's huge societal pressure. Again, we're circling back all the way to the first part of what we were talking about, to fit in, to do what the other people are doing, to do what the tribe's doing, to do what everyone else is saying. That's back to that 80% of people who, even if they're like, well, that doesn't quite make sense to me, but since 8 out of 10 of us are doing it, that's what I'm going to do too.
Yeah.
And that's very, very human.
I had a client yesterday who was telling me she was in her 60s and she said her husband has said to her, you've gone off the deep end with
Ah,
some of your belief systems. And her two daughters have stopped talking to her
oh God.
because she wouldn't back down. She said, I believe in this and I believe in that. And they said, you've
Yeah.
joined a cult,
Oh dear.
and so I don't know, it will just be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, what was it? Mark Twain. It's easier to convince the people they were fooled than to fool them in the first place. Isn't that his? It is. There's a little of that going on right now too. People just don't want to be wrong, and they don't want to think about how they could have thought about things differently. I mean, you're just going to have to accept that through your life, you've made some really poor decisions. Here's a poor decision I made. It wasn't 23andMe, but it was the same company that did that kind of thing back then. My husband sent in a sample, and I thought that was, I mean, at the time, I was way too naive thinking the best of people,
Mhm.
and I still try to think the best of people. But the idea that our DNA information is now, for those who participated in 23, that's being auctioned off
Mhm.
or sold off as just like cabinetry or land of a business going out of business. This is, it's absolutely terrifying. We're like so innocent sometimes as humans. We're like children. We can't conceive that people would want to take things or manipulate us in these really terrible ways that we've absolutely been
Well,
manipulated and had
I think
terrible things happen.
some of that has to do with the fact that you and I are both the first waivers, which means we're not good human beings. We literally don't understand. And also, some of it is privilege. I mean, we are white, Anglo-Saxon, women with roofs over our heads and education. And, you know, so much of the world doesn't have the privilege of being able to say, oh man, I'm so surprised people are cruel and mean and horrible because so much of the world is under such horrible, inhumane conditions. And
This
so,
is true.
for us, it's kind of naive. I feel sometimes that I'm very naive to not believe in, I don't want to call it evil because I don't believe that evil exists. I believe that blocking the good exists or
Yeah.
blocking light exists. I don't believe that evil is an entity. Um, but we're lucky that we can believe that.
Yeah.
And Frank, I guess, said even with all the evil she'd seen, she thought people were essentially good. So,
I think that's true. And, it takes you back to the Milgram experiment, somebody in authority telling you what's what, I've said this before, I know, in another interview somewhere, but I remember because I remember about how old I was. I didn't have a car yet, but I think I was thinking about cars. So I got my driver's license when I was 14, and I pretty much needed a car right away. And I know that doesn't happen these days, but it
no, my
sure
mother
did for
got
me.
hers when she was like 13 or 12 or something.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and I knew that I would have some freedom, and freedom basically for me meant to work so that I could, take care of my horse. So I mean, everything was about horses even back then. But I remember seeing this car with a bumper sticker on it, And the bumper sticker was question authority.
Oh yeah, everybody had that bumper sticker in those
Yeah.
days.
This is like, this is
Kill your
1975 probably.
television, question
Yeah, yeah.
authority.
Yeah, but I remember standing in the driveway. I don't remember whose car it was, but it was somebody who was at our house for one reason or another. And I stared at that bumper sticker for the longest time. It made a huge impression on me. And isn't that crazy? But I think it did. It really changed me. It didn't completely have me put life through that lens, but
It did its job. I
yeah, it
mean,
did.
it shows you how powerful just two words can be,
Right? Yeah.
and I think this is a funny story. I don't know if I've ever told you this before. When I was about 10 years old, Alan Watts came and lived at our house for about 6 months.
You should have waited till I swallowed. No way. Oh
So,
my gosh.
my father was a journalist and we spent a lot of, he was stationed, not stationed, he worked in San Francisco where I was born and became very good friends with Alan Watts at that point. And towards the end of Alan Watts's life, I think this was probably 2 or 3 years before he died, he came and lived with us in Washington, D.C. for a few months. I can still see him walking around the house in his bathrobe holding a cup of, it was a mug. I don't think coffee was in it. I think it was whiskey or something. But he left behind a bunch of presents for the kids. And one of them was a bumper sticker. And I had it on my car for years. It was neon green and it said in black block letters, "This is it." And at the bottom, there was a little tiny line that said metaphysical bumper sticker by Alan Watts. And I've looked online to see if they still make them. I thought about reissuing them. I mean, I just
Oh,
thought that
let's do it. I could
this,
easily do that. Let's do it.
this is
I'm
it.
so amazed at this story. Did you, because you have some nice pictures. Did you guys get photos?
There probably are some photos somewhere. One really funny thing happened was we had an enormous Kenneth Noland painting in our living room that was a target, one of
Yeah,
the targets.
sure.
And then we also had these amazing bows and arrows from the Yanomamo tribe, because my mother's and father's very good friend Tobias Schneebaum had been living with the Yanomamo, and he always brought us back presents. We had like a poison pipe that the kids would always play with, where you'd do like poison darts with it. Anyway, so Alan Watts one day noticed that if my sister was standing holding the bow and arrow, that the exact point of the arrow matched up with the center of the Ken Noland painting. So we have a series of my sister, so young, so just holding this arrow in front of the Ken Noland painting. But I don't have any pictures of Alan Watts. My brother or sister might from those days, but eventually after a few months, my mother said to my father, he's got to go. Like he's got to go. I think by the end of his life, he was a little bit in trouble, and
Could
we
see
couldn't
that with
forever.
somebody with a mind like that. I could definitely see that. He is one of my absolute favorites.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wow. Oh my God. Yeah, actually, it's astonishing that you could say this. And I know we're completely out of time now.
Oh,
The idea that, back even again to the first part of our conversation, you got to be in that energy,
mhm.
in that energy of his profound thinking, even if it, is just wow.
Yeah. Someday we'll have to talk about my childhood, because
Next up on
I went to nursery school at the White House with the Kennedys.
I
So
think you might have told me that
I'll
before.
probably have talked about that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like Forrest Gump sometimes. I've ended up like in the right place at the right time, meeting so many people, and being able to be in their energy or, talk to them or whatever.
And so much, again, even this morning, I heard that there's some new information coming out. Again, transparency. Some tapes about the aftermath of JFK's assassination, some new audio tapes have been released just in the
Who-
last few hours. I know.
Who's talking?
Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an old theory, right?
Yeah, but these, as far as I know, these public tapes that are on these tiny little voice cassette things are coming out. I just saw, just blew through on a social
More and
media
more.
thing on my
So-
while I'm getting ready for this. I mean, it's just sort of, you know, sometimes that little bits of information that come in. Mary, this has been fascinating. Let's do it again very soon.
Let's. I
So
would love
much to talk about. I know we could talk forever and ever, over and over again. So we'll just go ahead and book another time in the future and continue from
Love
there.
it.
Okay. All
love
right.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Take care, Candace.
Thank you so much. So for those of you out there who are service to others, practitioners, think about joining us at quantumhealers.com. Most of us do the kind of work Mary and I do, QHHT, BQH, that kind of stuff, but not all of us. We are alternative healers, practitioners of any kind. Love to have you. We are guru free. We don't tell you what to do or what to believe. We just support each other in a very great, let's just end it with this word, community. So thank you so much. Go to quantumhealers.com. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.